Virtual stamp shows have chosen different formats for exhibiting exhibits. Bill and George described their design criteria and the procedure they used to mount over 50 exhibits without being overwhelmed. Bill's script does most of the work. It can be run either on your website or on your own computer and is freely available. It allows a webmaster to show the exhibit with very little effort. So with no further delay, I'd please like to welcome George Struble and Bill Seymour and their seminar on behind the scenes mounting virtual PIPEX exhibits. I'll send it over to you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm delighted that you're all here. I'm delighted that I'm here. And I'm so pleased at the way PIPEX has been going this year. Now, first an overview. Bill did all the website work for CPEX2020, a virtual show. He did, and that meant the exhibits, seminars, everything. I think they had something like 19 exhibits. I'm not sure. And Bill has been the PIPEX webmaster for years. I have been the PIPEX exhibits chair since 2014, also director of the Willamette Valley Stamp Show. That's a small regional show, and it was virtual in 2021. We had 11 exhibits, and I did everything, including mounting all exhibits. I used templates, not Bill's script. Using the templates is much more primitive, but I made it work. I know the basics of HTML. I can use web software. Expression Web is the software that Bill and I use. I know far less than Bill knows, but I am webmaster for 2 philatelic organizations. So Bill and I were well prepared to mount a larger virtual show. And we were in full agreement on the format of an exhibit. It should have frame views, page views, and easy navigation among everything. And Bill and I have both been mounting our exhibits online using a similar format for over a decade. Then let me go to overall PIPEX. We have 50 competitive exhibits and 3 non-competitive ones. And I had projected in early February that we would have something like 41 exhibits. Well, in mid-February, we were given the status of Grand Championship Series, which was sort of an equivalent of World Series of Philately. And then later, it was called World Series of Philately Show, which meant that our Multi-Frame Grand Award is eligible for the Champion of Champions competition. Well, after that, the exhibits poured in. And I think we could have had 70 exhibits, and we could have handled 70 exhibits, but we set a cap of 50 competitive exhibits so that the virtual judging would not become impossibly complex, not only because of the number of exhibits, but because of the number of judges that would have to coordinate with each other. The virtual show could have gave us an opportunity for foreign exhibits because it's so as easy to send an exhibit from Ireland as from down the street in Portland. So we have exhibits from Canada, Mexico, Panama, France, Ireland, Norway, Singapore, and Bangladesh. And if Bill is here, it's
I don't think he's logged in yet.
Well, then I will go ahead with my second piece, which is my experience receiving the exhibits and using the script. As usual, I maintained a spreadsheet of exhibits and assembled the title pages, synopses, and supplied them to the jury, and built the exhibit list on the website. All the exhibits came to me. I had the sense to request that exhibitors send them by WeTransfer. Well, some of them came by Dropbox, and that works too, but it would have been unsupportable to have all these pages as attachments to emails. WeTransfer worked very well. I put each exhibit into one directory on my computer, so I have a lot of directories, each one with an exhibit in it. And Bill's script requires a little text file containing the title of the exhibit. And so one of my tasks is I make up a little text file. The files for each page have to be in JPEG format, and they also have to have particular names. The script requires that. So I converted the pages to JPEGs as necessary. There's a nice little utility to do that. Dixon Preston found a nice utility to rename a bunch of files all at once, and if I'd known of that, it would have saved some work for me, but I renamed the files as necessary, uploaded the files to a directory, again, one directory for each exhibit on the web server, and then I could run the script. Sometimes I had to ask Bill for help with larger exhibits and odd page sizes, but the script evolved, and different page widths is no longer a problem. If the widths of the pages in a row add up to 34 inches, the script takes care of it and puts them all exactly where they ought to be. But if you have pages like Michael Bloom's that take a quarter of a frame each, that still requires manual intervention. And we have two exhibits that have that. One is Michael Bloom's that is completely of that size, and then one other from Mike Lay, which has one quad size page exactly in the middle of a frame. And Bill took care of Michael Bloom's exhibit, but I took care of the Mike Lay's exhibit and was able to get that quad page in. And the HTML code looks very ugly, but I figured out how to do it, and there are tables within tables, and I didn't do it late at night, but after I had the HTML code, it worked. I loaded it and it worked perfectly. And this also got faster, partly because of the evolving of the script, and partly because I got more used to things. And so on the last exhibit, it was only a one frame exhibit, but still, from the time I downloaded the pages from WeTransfer to making sure that they were named properly, um, uploaded them to the web server, made the little title page, ran the script, checked everything, and linked the exhibit into the list of exhibits. 13 minutes. 13 minutes. Is Bill here now?
Yeah, I just got off the phone with Bill, and he'll be joining us momentarily.
Okay. Well, then I'll go on to the final section that I was going to handle, which is the future of virtual shows and exhibits. And yes, we want to return to exhibits on the floor. We certainly do. But there are some advantages to virtual shows. One, it's much easier to study the exhibits from the comfort of your own home and at any hour of the day or night. And it's also very possible to accept foreign exhibits. I was excited to have our foreign exhibits in PIPEX. It's also good for US exhibitors who really don't want to ship their exhibits and don't want to travel as far as Portland. The judging, well, I'm not a judge, but I think it's easier for the judges to judge a virtual show. Again, they can do it in the comfort of their own home with all their reference materials nearby. And I do understand that they spend more time on each exhibit than at a physical show because they can.
And George, I can let you know that Bill has joined us now.
Okay. Well, I will come back with a few more things about the future of virtual shows, but Bill, take it away with your path in developing the script, how it has changed, and walk us through it. But you'll have to unmute yourself, Bill. Well, if Bill's still setting up,
Still getting set up.
I'll just mention there are concerns with virtual shows. One is that an exhibitor could show things that he doesn't own, and also that he might use Photoshop or something to remove blemishes and improve the condition of something. And hybrid shows, I think, have a real possibility in the future. And they could be primarily virtual with some physical exhibits. They could be primarily physical with some virtual exhibits. And I think there's room in the hobby for both of those kinds. Bill, if you're ready, take it away.
Okay. So when I started on this path, I was doing the virtual exhibits for the PIPEX website, and I had to build each one of them manually. I was able to use a template to get close to what I wanted for the exhibit to look like, but it still took an hour or 2 hours to do an exhibit, and quite a bit longer if it was a multi-frame. So after the PIPEX show was completed, I decided that it would be easiest in the future to have some automated way of creating these exhibits. And so I started working on this script that uses the PHP language, which is very, very common on websites, to take images of the pages, resize them appropriately to turn into the right size to display on a website, and to create thumbnails, which are small ones. And then put it all together with a bunch of HTML code and turn it into the exhibit in the same format as I had been using for CPEX. And in fact, it's very close to the same format I use for my own collections on the web, and have been doing that for many, many years. Needless to say, as I got the script working for the simple stuff, single sized pages on 4x4 frame. That wasn't too difficult. It was just a matter of you know, figuring out what the HTML was going to look like, and building the files as appropriate. But of course, it turns out that exhibitors are more complex than that. So we had to work on generating exhibits where they weren't 4 pages across, 4 tall. So if they had a double-sized page, you had to skip one element in the frame, and you had to skip one when you're going from page to page. And then we had exhibits that had pages that were even odder size than just the standard one. So, and exhibits that were had pages that were too tall instead of just one tall. So each time we ran into a new configuration like that, then I would sit down and figure out how to make the script handle that as well as everything else. And we ended up with what we've got right now. It's a freely distributable script, and it's being used, of course, for PIPEX and for CPEX, but is available for anybody else that wants to use it. I've got it up on GitHub with a license that lets, you know, anybody use it and anybody change it if they want. I think that pretty much guts my. So George, I think you're next, and because at this point the script is up and running and ready for you to turn it into something that is an actual website. You're muted.
So, Bill, do I need to make George
Yes.
to be a co-host then?
Bill, I've done my sections, so it's up to you to walk us through the script, I think.
Okay, so let's do that. Let me bring up command prompt on my computer, and then we'll share that. Pieces of paper in the way here. Okay, can everybody see this page of, this is just a standard PowerShell in Windows. We have a file here called build.php. That's the script itself. And then we have all these exhibits, each one of them in their own folder. So if we change a directory to one of the folders, this is a single frame exhibit. And if you look here, it goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15. So in this particular case, the exhibit is 3 wide and 4 tall instead of 4 wide, 4 tall. All we have to do is run the script.
And let me add that those pages are not all of uniform width. Some are 10 inches, some are 11, some are 12.
The script creates the page image files from each of the full size, and then it creates the thumbnail. And as you can see, it steps through, it tells you where it's what it's doing. The process of creating the resized images is the longest process. And you'll see that it decided that one of the images there was double wide instead of single wide. Now, in this case, it's not actually double wide. We're just not putting anything in that fourth position. Almost done. And then that last little bit where it says create frame file and create page files, that's the actual building of the HTML code. And you saw how fast that was. It took us 78 seconds to do that particular exhibit. And I'm going to open that exhibit in a browser here and change my screen to share. To the browser window. So it's created a web page. It has the link that goes back to the exhibits page. It has the title. It tells you which frame you're in inside that title. And then it shows the exhibit itself as it resized each of the pages. These are the thumbnails. And these thumbnails are sized based on their height. We decided that doing that made a cleaner looking final result than if we did it by the width. And you'll see that some pages are narrower and some pages are wider. And so the height gives you a row that is all the same height. And the rows don't necessarily match up exactly because the pages sizes don't match up exactly. If you click on any of the pages, it takes you to a full-size version of that page. And then you've got navigation that takes you to the next page and the next page and the previous page, back up to the frame, down into a page, over to the next. All of that is available at any time. And then if the page itself is, for instance, if you're on either a small computer or on a phone where it's not really readable, you can click on the page and it'll bring up a full-size image that you can scroll around in and see really, really good detail. So we can see even the fact that the postcards are made up of lots of little dots there. And we can get close looking at the images of the, like here's a cancellation image. You've got actually what I would consider an easier to look at image than if you had the card sitting in front of you and you're holding it up in front of your eyes, unless you were using a magnifying glass. If we go to, let's see, I don't think we have any exhibits. Do we have any exhibits that have the individual items, George?
Yes, you could go to Exhibit 21.
Okay. Now, what we have here is one that George has done that has, here's the same page position we were looking at before, but when you click on an item on the page, it gives you a full-size image of the item. If you click off the item, it gives you the same full-size image of the page that we were looking at before. I think we've got this all the way through this exhibit.
Yes.
And the other thing that George did on some of his exhibits was to embed a link that would be similar to an image, but instead took you to a separate web page that had more detail than he was able to fit on the actual exhibit page.
Yeah, that's on Exhibit 20.
So here on Exhibit 20, he's got a link that you can look at with your phone and it'll open up a web page, or you can click it and get a web page that gives you more details than he's able to fit into the exhibit itself. Now, of course, the process of selecting individual images and having links to something that's outside the exhibit can help and can hurt the exhibitor depending on the quality of their items. Because if a judge can bring in a closer look at an individual item, he may see faults that he wouldn't have seen when he's looking at the page or looking at it in a physical exhibit. But in general, you get a better view of what's available. Now let's take a look at here's the GitHub page for the virtual exhibit script. Here's the script itself. And what it does is it's got some code at the very beginning that lets you change the limits of what the script can handle in terms of memory size and how long it'll run before PHP decides that it's hung. So we have it set for 5 minutes. And if you're running it on a local machine like I was doing when I ran my script here, 5 minutes is plenty for even a 10-frame exhibit. The memory limit is set to 256 megabytes, which the larger you set that, the slower the image handling happens. But the more likely it is that it'll finish an image if it's a very, very large one. So if we were looking at Michael Bloom's exhibit that has pages that are 2 by 2, so they're 17 by 22, 600 DPI scan of that page is really large. And because of that, when you try to resize that image, it doesn't fit into the 256 meg, and we had to bump the numbers up to do his. We set up arrays for each of the file types. We go through the directory of the folder that you're in and look for files that start with F, because we have assumed that all the full-size images are going to be an F, and then a 3-digit number, and then a dot, JPEG or TIFF or PNG or some sort of an image file. So the F array that I build right here is we've scanned the directory and made an array of files that start with the F. And then we go through that array, and for each element in the array, we build the string for a page file that's the same as, so it's P instead of F, and for a thumbnail file, T instead of F. Then we resize our images. And then once we've gone all the way through that array, then we have all the images we need to build the script. So the next thing we do is we build for the number of frames that we have for each frame, we build a frame file. And then for each page, we build a page file. And that's pretty much everything the exhibit does. Everything else in this script is just handling the syntax of HTML that we're going to output, and taking the names of the thumbnails and the names of the page files, and building your website. Once those files are all created, you just upload it to the website. Or, as George did, you run the script on the website, and you don't have to upload the files. You just have the full-size files there, run the script, it creates everything else, and then the portion of the website that is for viewing that script is, or that exhibit is done. So the only thing else I can think of that is worth talking about, see, there's a lot of text in here for building this, since it does these F writes to the file, and it says, okay, I'm going to put TD width with 33%, and then I'm going to put a line break in, and then I'm going to put the exhibit page. It's all just text handling at this point. This is, because it's written in PHP, almost every website in the world has PHP available on the back end. Really, the only ones that don't have that available are sites where the web host is not one of the commercial web hosts, but instead is just a private machine. So this is pretty much available for anybody that wants to build exhibits into a website and follow the format that we've generated for PIPEX and for CPEX, which is to give you the same display on the web as you would have if you were sitting in a physical show looking at physical exhibits. So I guess at this point, we should see whether there's any questions. I'll stop this share and we'll put it back up again if somebody needs it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, both of you. It was a very informative presentation. At this time, we ask that you unmute yourself. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and just ask them out from our presenters. We'll have Bruce first.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill and George. This has been a great presentation. I have a couple of naive questions about how to apply your script. First off, I know you mentioned that you had a Windows machine. I use Mac at home. Do I need to do anything differently than you do in your setup?
Okay, I'll help you with that. if you have PHP installed on your Mac, and the PHP language is available for Macintosh, for Linux, for Windows, for, oh boy, just about everything that's not old enough to be Commodore 64 or something like that. You just use a command shell on your machine and use PHP exactly the same way as we showed here. The process of installing PHP on a Mac is slightly different than the process of installing on a Windows machine. But it's actually a little bit easier these days because Macintosh is now running a their own version of Linux. So it acts more like a Linux machine than Windows does.
I see. I didn't realize they. I had in the back of my head that the Macs were running Unix on the back end, but maybe they.
Linux is the public domain version of Unix.
Oh, okay. Well,
so they'd have to, if they were using Unix, they'd have to be paying a licensing fee to the Linux people or the Unix people.
I see. Okay. Okay. So I know how to get to a command shell. PHP is something I would have to find and install.
Yes. And I believe it's, let me look on my machine real quick here, but I think it's php.org. But I just did a Google search on PHP Mac, and the website is php.net. And in the manuals, they have a installation on Mac OS page that has a step-by-step putting it together. And once it's installed, again, you take your command prompt, put yourself into the directory that has the full-size image files.
Yep.
And then tell PHP to run the PHP script using whatever path you have to the PHP script. If you're running it online, the script has to be in the same folder as the files because you can't change folders in the middle for an online one. But if you're running it locally on your machine, you just, the way I did it is I went //php or PHP space / build.php, and that said go up one directory and run the PHP script that's there, but it happens in your current directory.
But there's also a CSS file that has to be placed in the right place. Is that right?
Yeah, if the CSS file isn't there, then you get very simplified formatting. You don't have the buttons for the navigation are not optimized, or the CSS file is basically to define the formatting. And if you don't have the CSS file, then it just defaults to the basic formatting that HTML generates.
Okay, is a CSS file an additional unit in addition to obtaining your script from GitHub? Is a
yeah,
CSS
it's on
GitHub.
An example of the CSS file or the CSS file is on GitHub, and it has in it the formatting that you see on PIPEX. If you look at the CPEX website, you can go to the 2020 CPEX archive and look at the files there, and you'll see that the formatting looks different. The buttons for navigation are done with ovals instead of rectangles. The colors are a little bit different, and that's what the CSS file gives you, is the ability to make changes like that without having to change it in the script.
Right. Great. Super. Well, thank you so much. This is enough to get me in trouble.
So could you tell us what could you tell us what we need to search for on GitHub? I went to GitHub, but I'm really not sure what you've called it for us to search on.
Okay, if you go to the chat window here in Zoom, that's, you go down to the bottom and click on chat. There's a link there to the GitHub site right now.
Oh, virtual. Okay.
Okay. I want to tell you that if you can't figure out how to raise your hand to ask a question, you can always ask your question on the chat board. I'm reading those also. Next person up is Roger. If you'd like to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Roger, we can't hear you because you need to unmute yourself. There you
There we
go.
go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I went to I clicked on the GitHub link and lost all my compatriots here on the Zoom screen. So I don't know how to get that back. My question was that basically you've gone about 3 steps further than I understand. But on my exhibits that I've had online for like 20 years were an HTML code that I just, copied and inserted images into it. Okay, now I understand what you're doing is all automated. That's the effect of it. So my question is if I wanted to display my exhibits on my website using your script, I would go to GitHub to get your script. I would go to PHP.net to get, I'm not sure.
The PHP language itself.
The language. Okay. And when I go there and download it to my machine, where does it go and what do I do with it?
That is dependent on what operating system you're running on your machine. Are you in Windows?
No, I'm a Mac.
Okay. So in Mac, there's instructions on that php.net site for installing PHP on a Mac.
Okay.
But basically you bring up a command prompt, or on a Mac, they would call it a command shell probably. And you use the tools that are built into the Mac operating system to install PHP on your machine. And that's probably all you have to do. With the Windows machine, it's a little bit more complex because we have to tell Windows where PHP is.
Okay.
But on the Mac or on a Linux machine, it does that as part of the install process.
Okay. So what I need this PHP for is to basically see what it looks like on my machine, correct?
You use the PHP in order to execute the PHP script that builds the HTML files from your images.
Okay, so when I upload to my host, what I do now is I upload a folder of images because there's already a folder there with the CSS and HTML information, and that folder goes and finds the folder that my images are in. In this case, I would upload PHP and with the image file inside that folder to my host.
You would upload to your host the scans of the pages named as F001.jpg, F002.jpg.
And so how does my host know that I'm using this PHP or your script?
Your host already has PHP installed on it.
Right.
The script is not used to display anything on the web. The script is only used to build the HTML files.
Okay.
So you would copy the script build.php into the folder that you have for your exhibit.
Okay.
And then you would, on the web, through your browser, you would go to that folder and the file build.php. So if your script, or if your the exhibit pages that you uploaded was on roger.com.
Right.
And this was roger.com/myexhibit that held the exhibit files.
Correct.
You would put the full-size images in that folder and the build.php in that folder.
Right.
And then in the root folder, you would put the exhibits.css. Then you would go to your web browser, you'd go to roger.com/myexhibit/build.php, and it would build the website for you.
Oh, okay.
And that's exactly the process that George was using to do the PIPEX website.
Okay, I think I follow that. We'll see.
You've got my email, so you can always get in touch with me if you need to.
Sure, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation and all the work you're doing on this stuff.
And you notice that we've transitioned during that discussion from you're running the script on Roger's computer to running the script on his web host.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Roger, like someone else said, just enough information to get yourself in trouble. The next person up is somebody from the chat, and that would be Dixon. You had a question. If you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, it was just a quick one, Bill. If I understood it right, what George has in is one of those exhibits. There's some QR codes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to do anything in the script to support those, or were they to support it independently?
Yeah, the way the script is set up is if you have individual items scanned and a QR code is the same as an individual item, you name those individual items along with the full-size images. You have the item images, and those are named I001.1, I001.2, I001.3, on like that. What we did for George is we made the I001.1 into the QR code. So when you got done building your website and you went in and moved the areas that point to that QR code scan, you just move that over where the QR code is in your HTML editor and do it there. Have you done any with individual items yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, try taking one of the exhibits from 2020 and take a look at that, because it has individual items for each of the exhibits I did for PIPEX 2020.
Okay, I'll do that. Maybe I could get George says exhibit number 21 also.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome, Dixon.
Thank you for your question. Next up is Michael Bloom. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, I'm not a programmer. I understood most of what was said, but it occurs to me that organizationally or structurally, what we really need is someone to provide kind of a third-party service of installing the script on the web server as an initial kind of investment, if you will, and the ability to upgrade the script and even to upload files as a service. So if I'm on an organizing committee of a show, I can say, okay, look, if we want to have this kind of availability on our website for a virtual show, it's going to cost me $2,500, let's say, for a consultant, and Bill, it probably wouldn't be you, it'd be someone, to actually install the software, test it, and get it running the first time. And then in subsequent shows, it would take less work, so it'd be less expensive. But an organizing committee could include it in its budget and not have to essentially reinvent the wheel. So the installation to the website would include, for example, perhaps a not public facing page with instructions at a high level on simply how to bring in the pages, how to name the pages, but not get involved beyond that. Do you see what I'm saying? I just think that we have people here, fortunately, who are more savvy, and I know some of this myself, but I would be intimidated by trying to do this, let's say, for a website. I think we need to make this, you've automated the process of generating the script. Now we have to automate the process of getting the script out and make it easy for organizing committees.
We've done some of that. I did generate a document on instructions on how to do all of this. That's short of a service that does everything. It's an instruction on how you can do everything.
I think you're going to run into resistance. Other shows, other organizing committees are not going to have the talent to even take your instructions, George.
Most organizing committees have someone who is their webmaster. That person has the appropriate permissions to do this process. We have right now on the GitHub page a README file that talks a little bit about installing it. We're going to replace that with the one that George has generated because it's got a lot more details in it. Yeah, any organization that wants to do this that doesn't have a webmaster that is feeling competent enough to be able to upload image files and to upload the script file, and more importantly, to be able to edit the CSS file to give it their look and feel so that it looks like the rest of their website. I think that there are plenty of people that would be willing to step them through the process or to do the task for them. I could certainly do that easily enough. And there's only so many shows per year.
Thank you for volunteering, Bill.
$2,500. Wow, that's a lot of money. What can I buy with that?
You want to be careful, Bill, what you're volunteering for.
That's right. Okay. Listen,
You've answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
thanks for the question. Looks like we have one more question from Keith. Go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, is the frame, page, thumbnail, and item files all in the same directory?
Yes. Yes, everything goes into the same directory. It's just so much simpler to do that.
Well, that was a quick question. Any more questions? We have a few more minutes. Nope. Well, in that case,
One last question.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah.
When you guys are talking about directories, is that the folder?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Folder and directory essentially have identical meanings.
thank you.
And the prices
I have another quick question. For example, for my exhibit, there are hundreds of images, and I chose not to submit them individually, but that just seems like an awful task for the person who's simply filling the directory with I001 to I200.
That's true. For my collection website, I have an image for every stamp in the collection. And so it's not unusual at all to have a page that has 30 or 40 images on it. But once you've named the images, you don't have to touch it. The script does everything else until you get to the very end, because the script doesn't know where on the page the image is. So there's a feature of HTML called area mapping. And what you do is you define an area on your screen by its position.
Oh, the page.
And that creates a link to another page or to an image. The script places all of those maps in one position on on the page stacked on top of each other. So in a web editor, I use Expression Web because it's free and been around for many years, but you might be using one of the other ones. You take your mouse, you go to where that map area is, click on it. It tells you this one is this image. You drag it over to the image and resize it to match. So if you're doing a stamp, it's resize it to match. Well, let's do this. This is going to be easier, I think. Let me open on my image editor or my editor here.
We just have a few minutes left.
Okay. Was 20 or 21? Exhibit 20, wasn't it, George, that had the images?
21.
21. Okay, I'm going to share my editor screen. Okay, this is Expression. Are you looking at the virtual exhibits or are you looking at Expression Web? Can you, I'm not sure what you're seeing. I've got my little bar, it came up on the wrong screen.
We're seeing a page full of HTML titles.
Okay, that's the right one. So let me open up this first page here. This is his page, and if I click on this, see how it's got a little highlight around it?
Yep.
And I can grab the corner of that highlight and resize it, or I can grab the highlight itself and drag it somewhere else. That is the map area. If we go into the code and look at that map area, is right here, and it says that it's referencing the image file I001.1.jpg. Target equals blank means that it opens in a new tab or a new window, and the coordinates are in pixels, the position of it on the screen. So it's the upper left corner and the lower right corner. There are more complex things you can do with maps. You can make circles, you can make polygons that don't have four sides or right angles on the corners. But this is the simplest way to do it, is to do the rectangles. What I did for the CPEX site is when I had, for instance, two images that were overlapping each other, then I turned them into polygons and made, L-shaped maps so that they, when you click on the part that you see of an object, it shows that object. This is less likely to be done on most websites. It's kind of up to the website, the webmaster himself, as to how much effort he's willing to put into it, because this does take extra time. For every page that you've got on that site, you have to put the map over the image. Does that make more sense?
Yes, it does.
I think you just lost a lot of people, Bill.
I probably did.
And I think for most shows that might want to have virtual components, neither the webmaster nor the exhibitors are going to hold still for this. And I think there are other ways of handling enlargements. The one I think is probably best is the one that Ross Jones put in last year's Great American Stamp Show, where you can click on something and get a magnifying glass that you can move around. His was only big enough for a stamp, and I think it needs to be bigger so it can hold work on a cover. But it doesn't require all of this stuff that Bill just described.
We actually have that in there. It's not a magnifying glass, but when you click on anywhere on the page that doesn't have a map in it, it gives you, in a new window or a new tab, it gives you the full-sized image. And then you can zoom in or out on that image as you wish. You've got the scroll bars on the outside of your browser to move around on the image. And so you can see the detail you want there without any extra effort. But if you're, well, like me, and putting up your collection on a website, or like Roger would do by putting his exhibit up on his own website, then the extra level of detail and the ease for the person who's viewing it to be able to click on something on the screen and have that something come up larger for you is worth the extra effort, I think.
Well, listen, I'm sorry to say this, but we've actually come a little past our time. PIPEX would like to thank you all for participating in this interesting presentation. I want to thank you to George Struble and to Bill Seymour, not only for this presentation, but for everything you've done for PIPEX. There are 4 remaining PIPEX seminars today. Hope you'll be able to join in some of those. And again, we thank George and Bill and hope you all have a great time at PIPEX.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Take care.
Thanks for great explanations. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Take care.